Today's modern working professionals expect a learning experience that reflects the world we live in. Canvas LMS is built to help organizations unlock the potential of skills-based learning by focusing on what matters to learners and their educators. From dynamic course delivery to adaptable credentialing, Canvas empowers learners to thrive in a rapidly evolving landscape. See what it's all about at canvas.com.
Welcome to The Accidental Trainer, a podcast where you'll hear firsthand stories and tips on how to start and grow your training career.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of ATD Accidental Trainer Podcast. I'm your host, Alexandria Clapp, and today we have with us Mark C. Crowley. Mark is a pioneer in workplace leadership. He's a speaker and best-selling author of Lead from the Heart, and now the author of the new release about to be published, Power of Employee Wellbeing. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you so much, Alex. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So fun to catch up with you a little bit before we get started. We're going to chat about your book, but as always, we love to hear a little bit about our guests and how they came to land in their current role. And if there is something that was accidental in your journey, please share.
So I should be practiced at this, right? But here's the progression. And I absolutely have the accidental experience. And actually, I call them synchronicity because there's been so many of them. But I have a big one for you. So here's the story. Mom died when I was 9, raised by my father, psychologically and emotionally abused me for my entire childhood. He was really warped as a human being, even though he was a very successful person. And by the time he had pretty much crippled me in terms of my self-belief and self-esteem, he kicked me out of the house right after I graduated from high school. No money for college, even though he easily could have afforded it. No food in the cupboard, no furniture, no help me find an apartment. I was on my own and had to figure out how to navigate my life and how to navigate getting through college, because he told me you're going to be an abject failure, in my opinion. So I believe that if I didn't graduate from college, that I would be the very person that he predicted. So I was going to graduate. So I did graduate. I should have been kicked out the first couple of years, but I got into a rhythm, graduated from one of the top 10 public schools in the country, graduated with honors. So I kind of pulled off a miracle, really. And I started talking to people that were graduating, and they said, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, I'm going off to Harvard Business School, or I'm going to law school, or I'm going to graduate school. And I'm thinking, I'm just lucky to have graduated. They should probably have never given me a degree. But then I started thinking, well, wait a minute, like nobody had it harder than me to get through here from the same school with the same curriculum. How do you guys feel that you're able to go off to Harvard where I'm feeling like no one's going to want me? And I realized, of course, that it should be obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me at the point. It was that I'd just been raised differently. I didn't have anybody who loved me, giving me safety, giving me encouragement, thoughtful direction, and have a place to go back to. If anything went wrong, I didn't have somebody to go, we'll dust you off and bring you back into success because you're going to be a great success in your life. I never had that. I unconsciously decided to give people that work for me everything that I always wanted, all the things that I didn't get. So every team that I managed thrived, and they just kept promoting me. I'm like 30 years old and I'm running sales for this huge bank. And I'm like, are you people crazy? But they could see that I was getting these results in people. So fast forward, I'm 43 years old. This woman had worked for me for 20 years, came into my office, and she said, you manage people very differently. Like it was almost an accusatory tone. You manage people very differently, don't you? And I said, what do you mean? She started to tell me, and she goes, nobody manages people like that. She goes, people love working for you because you see the potential and you grow it and you develop and you make people feel that they can do great things. And you're so appreciative, and went on and on and on. It was like, oh my God, all I've been doing is managing people aligned to this upbringing. And I never had it conscious. So for the next 4 or 5 years, I just refined it. Well, then I decided to write a book. And in the process of writing a book, a friend of mine said to me, he goes, you're going to have to explain why your practices are going to work for other people. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, people are going to think you need a shitty childhood in order to lead like this. And he was right. And I hadn't thought to do the work. So here's where the miracle comes in. I started to do research. I spent over a year and a half looking for evidence to validate my thesis that these things work on everybody. But he said, you're going to have to think about, why did people scale mountains for you? Why did people consistently, no matter man or woman, age, doesn't matter what their educational level, doesn't matter what job they're doing, people perform for you like nobody else. Why? And I believe that I was affecting the hearts of people. That was my epiphany. So I went to a world-class cardio surgeon and said, is there any reason for me to believe this? Am I deluding myself? And what she said was, we're just figuring this out in medicine. And you are onto something really, really amazing, because we now know that the heart is not just a pump, that the heart is communicating with the brain 24/7. The heart sends more information to the brain than the other way around. So when you say lead from the heart, you really, truly are affecting people in the heart. And that has led me, when I realized that, I was like, oh, I'm not going back to financial services, I'm not going back to a job like I had traditionally. I have something very meaningful to say.
I love it. So many things I was just thinking about. You were describing almost not an archetype, but there's that expression to be the teacher that you never had. And then you're going into the story of you're a manager. So maybe there's something wrong with our workplaces, that there's not a expression like be the manager that you wish you had had. But what an incredible story, and cool that you started to do the research to make sure that you don't have to have that same childhood, unfortunate childhood, to be a good manager and lead from your heart, that we all have the potential. And I must say that you sort of show up with that presence, whether you're leading a conversation and you're about to walk into a podcast interview, because we've just been chatting for 20 plus minutes, and you brought a lot of heart and made it seem very easy to jump into a conversation. I always request with guests that I'm able to warm up with them a little bit beforehand. And it's interesting how some people feel busy and they're ready to get going and to start recording. And it probably benefits both of us to do a little bit of that warm up.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that you were totally game. So I already see you modeling it in everything you do, even in this podcast conversation. I'm so excited to talk more about well-being. You start off the book with some harsh truths, I think, backed up with some stats. You say employee engagement programs don't work when we look at their performance, and most generic well-being programs don't work. I was sad to see that, if you have headspace and you're taking advantage of the yoga classes and the gym that your company is paying for. So, ouch. Tell us more about that. Why don't these work? What do you propose instead when it comes to supporting employee well-being in the workplace?
Well, first of all, thank you for the compliment, and thank you for reading the book, because you just asked a really wonderful question. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why engagement isn't working, but the big one is that if anyone's listening to this, like, wait a minute, we talk about engagement all the time, why would you want to ditch it? Well, because it hasn't gotten any better in 15 years. The percentage of people that are engaged in America is the same as it was 13, 14 years ago. And you say, well, how can that be? We've been talking about it forever and everybody's been measuring it. That's all they've been doing. It's been very insincere. And so you use the word critical. I am being critical of it, but not critical of it to say that it wasn't worth trying. It's that nobody did try. So in other words, what we did was we did this annual survey for a long time. And then people said, oh, we should probably do twice a year. It's not good enough to sample people's feedback and then ask them 12 different questions, right? So if you think about the Gallup 12 questions, one of them is, do you have the proper equipment to do your job? And then another one is, do you have a best friend at work? So you get your engagement numbers, and whatever the number is, the manager gets it, and the senior management goes, you really have to elevate your engagement. So you go, okay, so what do I do? Do I try to figure out if they have the right equipment, or do I go help them try a friend? So we've never really given people a very clear sense of what needs to be done. But the bigger issue, Alex, is that we've never held managers accountable for it. So you could be this really toxic boss and you could get feedback. And even if you're seeing that your own team feels that you're uncaring, unsupportive, managed with fear and intimidation, there's no one in the organization that's ever come back and said, for you to continue to be a manager here, you're going to have to do a better job. Like, we appreciate the fact that you're hitting your goals, but you can't do it by harming people. And if you can't fix that, we'll help you. But if you can't get there, we're going to give somebody else your job. We've never held people accountable for that. So here's the thing. The premise of asking people twice a year I ask you these questions, and then it takes like 1 or 2 months for the data to get analyzed and get back to the manager. And the manager's looking at that and they go, well, I think this is probably Alex. This is what they do. Alex is unhappy, but she's talking about something that happened 6 months ago. Well, that's stupid. Why are we talking about that still? Because it's the only way we can measure it. It's like, this has been festering in somebody's mind all this time, but we didn't get it to them until now. And then by the time the survey comes out, it's not the employee's problem, it's the manager's problem, but the manager just quickly dismisses it. So nothing happens. So then the employee goes, well, this is stupid. Like, why am I bothering to bare my soul and, put this on paper when no one's taking it seriously? So what I'm saying is that the simpler solution, and there's massive research that's in the book that shows you this, to ask people more routinely how they feel. So interestingly, to bridge between Lead from the Heart and the Power of Wellbeing, employee well-being, my premise has always been that humans are not rational. Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. And we've always taken that to heart, no pun intended. And we've always thought we need the brainiest, smartest people in management, instead of people that basically care about other people, which is what I'm advocating for. So what you have is this premise that we are rational. So I will come to you and I will say to you, hey, we really need to do this, Alex, because if we do, our customer service score is going to go from 3.31 to 3.39. And won't that be great? And you're like, doesn't matter to me, doesn't mean anything to me. So we have to be addressing how people feel about work, because feelings drive powerfully. Feelings and emotions drive human behavior. If that's the premise, and that's been repeatedly proven to be true, even though it's not commonly understood, we should be asking people regularly through pulse surveys, 1, 2, 3 questions. So Alex, you work for me. So you get a survey that says, on a scale of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, how effective is he at coaching you? Does he make you feel that you're a valued member of our team? So these are 2 questions. You can ask them once at the same time. But there's technology now that distributes that information back to the manager and their manager and HR in an instant. So now you have this feedback, and I'm compared to all of my peers. Now management can look at this and they can say, well, okay, so we've got all these different teams evaluating their manager, and we've got all these managers that are hitting their goals, but their employees hate working for them. If you're my manager, you can come to me and you can say, hey, Mark, you're doing a fantastic job of hitting numbers, but I want you to see how your team compares to each other and show you that your team doesn't really like working for you. They don't feel good about working for you. They don't feel that you're caring and supportive and creating well-being, which we now know is the greatest driver of employee performance, optimal performance there is. So now, where we didn't have this with engagement, where there was no accountability, if I'm seeing that everybody else is in the green, if you will, right? Green, orange, red, or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I have no defense if I consistently keep getting red 1s and 2s when everybody else is getting 5s. So organizationally, we're going to change managerial behavior simply by demonstrating to people that you're not doing it the way everybody else is doing it, and that's not sustainable. And the benefit of that for everybody listening is that means nobody's going to end up working for a manager that doesn't care about them, that doesn't care about their well-being, wants the best for them, is an advocate, is a coach, somebody who wants to see them progress in their career. This is life-changing to be able to do this. And it's simply by asking these singular questions.
I have a lot of thoughts and some notes that I want to revisit. Like you mentioned, best friend at work. I want to revisit that. But first, I want to level set a little bit about well-being, because I got so excited. I jumped right in and I forgot to mention to you, because I thought you might think this is interesting and probably just reinforces the work that you do. In terms of what I see with the ATD community, well-being and our interest in this topic continues to grow. So I get to help facilitate our community conversations that we do at our big international conference each year. And we have been hosting a community conversation. These are roundtable discussions, really coming to chat with other peers and just have a facilitator there to make sure people are chatting. We've been doing one on well-being since we introduced them to the conference in 2022, and it has grown exponentially. The attendance to the well-being related session. So just this past year, it was like a fire hazard, the amount of people. I was like having to kick people out constantly. We had like 160 people trying to get themselves into that room to talk about well-being. It is something that folks care about in a multifaceted way, their own personal well-being and supporting the ecosystem in their organization, creating the right parameters to create employee well-being in their organization. So interest on all levels. I just wanted to mention that because for our listeners,
it's so fantastic. Like I'm getting goosebumps because with Lead from the Heart, I was very much on the cutting edge. I was way ahead of the culture. And it took a long time for the culture to recognize that when I said Lead from the Heart, that I wasn't a spiritualist, a religious nut, somebody who didn't understand business. I'm really speaking to humanity. Human beings thrive when we experience a high ratio of positive emotions to negative emotions. And when we don't get that, we wither. And when we wither, we can't perform. So well-being is very much in a leader's best interest. And obviously, it's in an employee's best interest. And this is another interesting distinction, because when you think about employee engagement, only companies wanted that. It's like, we need to raise employee engagement. We need to get people to work more. We need to get people to, produce more and to apply more discretionary effort. So if you were my manager and you came to me, it's like, I need you to be more engaged. Okay, what's in it for me? Like nothing, really, right? But the company wants that. And so this has always been sort of this top down, we need to do this to people because we need them to give more. And with employee well-being, if you go up to an employee and say, I've been trying to get you to be more engaged for the last 10 years and that hasn't worked. How about if I focus on your well-being? People are going to go, hell yeah. Now you're talking about something that's important to me. It's important to the employee and it's important to the company. We know when people have a high experience of well-being, they perform at their best. If it's as simple as that, then let's just do that. No 12 questions twice a year, no cumbersome process. Just ask people routinely, how are you feeling about this? How are you feeling about this? Meet together as a management team, see if there's ways you can make it better for people, and keep doing that. You have a problem, you calibrate, you move on. You calibrate, you move on. And you're continually making an experience for people where they feel like their voice matters, that you're adjusting the way you're running things. Sometimes life is just really hard and business is just tough. But that's not to say that you can't do things to make people feel better. And that's what well-being is all about. What they did in Oxford, they asked people, like, how did you feel at the end of this week? And they didn't say, now, if you're going through a personal problem, like you're going through a divorce or you've got financial problems or, kids doing badly in school, please exclude that from your consideration. They didn't do that. They just simply asked, how did you feel at the end of your work week? And it's just one simple question. How did you feel at the end of this week? That they could determine week to week, month to month, that all the productivity went higher or very significantly. It's so simple and it's so remarkable and it's such an amazing win-win.
You've mentioned a few things so far about being a manager and getting constant feedback that's related to well-being. You've talked about emotions, how they drive human behavior. We've talked about friendships very briefly. I keep wanting to go back to that. Can you help us define what are metrics that we can be using to measure employee well-being?
Okay, let's just start with what we've been talking about, which is pulse surveys. I have an article on this in Fast Company coming out in mid-September for anybody who's interested in seeing more about this. But basically, it's rotating a series of questions, such as, I work for Alex, and how supportive do you feel Alex is generally for you personally in your work day and work? So I can ask that question, or I can say, the company has just introduced new benefits. How well do you feel that those serve you personally? So you can ask those kinds of questions. You can ask like traditional HR questions. You can ask a specific question, right? Then you're doing it on a very simple scale of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or bright green all the way over to bright red. So either way you want to do it. And you're getting this feedback, but you're able to ask those questions over and over. So you can start to see the trends. So if you pick like 12, 15 questions that you want to ask, and then you ask them on a routine basis, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year, then you can start to see what are the trends. How are people feeling about their managers? How are they feeling about their opportunities to be coached? How are they feeling about their opportunities to grow and stay with the organization? So you have this data. What does it do for you? Well, it tells you where to fix, what to adjust. And that's powerful because you can do it in real time. So if you're getting a twice a year survey and it takes you 2 months to get the data, you don't know what to fix. And so nobody did fix anything, which is why the numbers are the same. So then you say, okay, so what's the benefit of this? Well, let's start with the most important one as far as I'm concerned. We spend so much time hiring people. Why would we want to let them go somewhere else because their needs aren't being met? So if you're finding out that people don't feel that they're working for a caring boss, you can adjust for that. You can coach that manager to fix that so that that employee says, okay, they fixed that. I'm not going anywhere. You think about just the cost alone of that, but then there's opportunities to grow people. You could ask people in the next 3 years, could you see yourself becoming a manager? So now you say, wait a minute, we got 20% of our employees that say they'd like a managerial role. What do we do about that? Let's offer classes. Let's offer a workshop. Let's give these people some special training. So now all of a sudden, you're in real time adjusting how people are experiencing work. And they're going home and they're like, hey, I filled out this survey. And next thing I know, I'm going to this class. Like, this is so cool. And I'm going to be a manager one day, or at least I hope to be. You can feel the joy of that in people, right? And that fuels well-being. But the most important thing is that you can just look at the drivers of performance. Like, what are your key metrics? What's on your dashboard? And see, hey, people are in the green. We should be thriving. And they will be. So you can go, this is worth it. Like, this is worthwhile. If you can see that, if people are saying, I'm really happy to work here, and you're seeing productivity increase of all your key performance indicators, it's this ongoing win-win.
Okay, I know we won't get to all the chapters, but I wanted to hit a few of them if we can. So you start with Know Thyself. We recently chatted with Marty Dubin, and I mentioned to you, it felt like his book is all about self-awareness and doing self-reflection, and could be the precursor to yours, because this chapter, Know Thyself, comes in the beginning. So maybe you work on that self-work with his book, but here you have a simple exercise that you mentioned to learn about yourself involves asking others, what's one thing you believe significantly limits me as a leader? And leader in this sense could be, maybe you're just leading a project or a team. You don't have to have the title leader. That seems simple, but also could be very vulnerable and scary, and potentially logistically tricky if you are stepping into a new organization or a new team, new project, small organization. Do you have any helpful parameters or guidelines to that work? Like, how many people should you ask? Who? You say friends and family. Are they really reliable for your limitations as a leader?
There's a couple things here. So I had a friend of mine who, about 4 or 5 years ago, she said, you realize most people are operating out of their childhood selves most of the time, don't you? And I said, well, what do you mean? I mean, it resonated immediately, but particularly because of my own upbringing, I know that that has triggered a lot of behaviors in my life. But what she was saying is that, we get into a conflict with somebody because they said something to us or they behaved in a certain way that rubbed us the wrong way. She said, a lot of times it's not the person that's rubbing us the wrong way. It's our brother from 20 years earlier that did the same thing that really made us mad, and we're re-experiencing it on an unconscious level. What I'm saying is that you need to really dig into, what were your parents like? What was your sibling like? What was your life like? I mean, I lost my mom at 9. I mean, that dramatically changed the trajectory of my life, and it was profound loss. And I had to kind of go into that and say, how is this influencing me? What's my father's influence? I think I spent probably the first 45, 50 years of my life trying to prove myself to somebody who wasn't really in my life, except for the first 18 years. Because it's like, oh yeah, you don't think I'm going to be successful? Well, look at this and look at this. And I just got this promotion. And he's like, not in the room. But we're all doing this. Stage one of this is to get a real clarity around how your values and views of the world were shaped, so that you can look at them and say, I'm not taking that with me. I'm not taking this self-criticism. I was always very hard on myself. My wife would say, why are you so hard on yourself? And I go, well, no one else is going to be like I need to be. And like, it was stupid. You need to be on your own side, but I was carrying this forward. So these are just examples of all of our lives being influenced. And the better you know yourself, you will know, oh, I'm responding to Tom because of something that my brother or my dad said 20 years ago. I'm not going to give Tom a bad time. That's not about him. Having that ability to navigate that is very powerful. Second part of this is if you're a leader and you want to grow, is asking the people around you, people who are your peers, people who are your bosses, and people who work for you. So here's the way to do this in a very powerful way. And I've done this a million times. So you work for me, Alex, and I say to you, Alex, I'm trying to become a more effective leader. I want to keep growing. And I would like it if you would tell me 2 things that you think that I do really well as a leader.
You connect to people personally and you're friendly.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Now, when I've had people work for me, they also go, you're the greatest manager because they want to please you, right? And you're setting it up. Tell me 2 things that I'm doing well. Oh, I could give you 20, Mark. I could give you 30. Just give me 2. So I got my 2 from you. Thank you. So then I said, well, I did mention that I really want to grow. And so it's helpful for me to know the things that I'm doing well. But please now tell me 1 thing that you think that is limiting me as a manager. If I could do better, would influence me being a better manager to you. The first instinct people have is, oh no, you're the greatest. Remember, I told you that. And I said, I know. Thank you for that. However, you just gave me 2 great things about me. So just 1, it shouldn't be hard. And guess what happens, Alex? It's a punch in the stomach. It's like they have been thinking about this forever. They just didn't want to say it to you because they thought they were going to get in trouble. One manager of mine that I did this with, these are people running retail bank branches where you get loans and checking accounts and everything. And I went out to him to do his review and I had this exercise and he goes, you never come to me. You go to all the other managers. You never spend enough time with me. And I go, is spending more time with you, would that matter to you? And he goes, yeah, I really like that. So I wrote that down. His name was Ed, and I just made a point to go spend more time with him. You don't fight people on the feedback. You accept it and you say, okay. The other thing is, if you have the courage, is to share it. You don't come back and go, Ed Diaz told me I don't spend enough time with him. You go back and you say, this is the feedback that I got. Some of you didn't think I spent enough time with you. Some of you thought that I didn't appreciate you enough. Some of you don't think that I'm growing you enough. And I am going to fix it. And you can just see people like, I can't believe he had the guts to tell us all the feedback because, it was rough to give it to him. But you will grow so profoundly when you do this and become so much better of a manager because we all have blind spots. We just don't see it. Like I never would have realized that he was feeling hurt, that he heard other managers, oh, Mark came by and saw us and spent the day or we had lunch or whatever. And I'm like, he doesn't do that for me. It was painful for him. So that's a feeling and an emotion. So if I can go spend more time with him and create a positive emotion, I've got somebody who's much more committed. And he was phenomenally committed. He had some of the best performance of his career after that day that I went out to see him.
That's amazing. Okay, since you mentioned emotions, I wrote down this quote, how managers make us feel drive employee commitment, loyalty, well-being. Some might be surprised by this chapter. Some maybe feel vindicated. What actions do you recommend, additional actions that you can take around emotions that will help boost well-being?
All right, so I have a very cool example that will apply to the people who aren't managers too. So there's a guy named John Gottman, Gottman. He's a professor emeritus at the University of Washington. And he wrote a book, and basically it's about how marriages work. And it's really a relationship book. But what he's shown is that he can sit down with a couple and within 5 minutes, he can determine whether or not they're going to stay together or not. It's called the Gottman ratio. The relationships that survive have a positive to negative emotion experience of 4 to 1 or better. You get into a spat, you leave the dishes in the sink and your wife hates that. So she comes out and goes, how many times do I have to ask you not to leave the dishes in the sink? So now you're having a little bit of a spat and it annoys you. The next day, the same thing happens. So you're annoyed with me because I keep doing the thing that you don't want me to do. But if I'm texting you in the day saying, how's your day, Alex? Just thinking about you, looking forward to having dinner with you, spending time with our baby tonight. It's like, ding, positive emotion, right? He's thinking about me, he loves me, and that made me feel good. If I am appreciating you, if I'm saying, oh, you look so nice today, or I really love the dinner that you made last night, or thank you for making the plans for our vacation. I don't have the time to do that. All of these are drip, drip, drips of positive emotions. And he's saying that you can live with the dishes in the sink if you have the offset of all these positive emotions. And this is the truth of all relationships. So if we think about how to keep somebody's well-being, we should be thinking about what I call emotional currency. So instead of thinking every solution is, oh, if I give them another $10 a month, that's going to solve the problem. Think about ways that you can give people an experience of positive emotions. Be more grateful to them. There are a whole lot of different ways to do it. Obviously, the book is filled with examples of this. If you just remember that we human beings thrive on positive emotions and we are withering when we don't. And there's actually science that shows when people have less than 1-to-1, they're really miserable, like they're like going sideways. And the healthier we are is 4-to-1, 5-to-1, 6-to-1. This is like magic from a leadership standpoint. If managers understand that if feelings and emotions are driving behavior and I can give people and ensure people have that experience, all you did was you made people feel safe. You were developing them. You were encouraging them. You were appreciating them. You were telling them how connected they were to the mission of the organization. And it wasn't about you as a leader. All of those things that you were doing, you're setting people up for optimal performance. So one last piece about this that I think will blow your mind. There's something called coherence. So this communication that's going on between the heart and the mind 24/7, when we have this massive experience of positive emotions to negative emotions, it creates what's called coherence in that communication. And when human beings are in coherence, we set people up for optimal performance. If every leader in the world just understood that, we would transform our workplaces around the world.
Yes, I love it. I love talking about emotion. We're running out of time, so I want to jump to some more advice. Tell us what to do about friendships at work. You note that they are on the decline. This is in the cultures of community and belonging chapter. I would love to know a little bit more context about that, but then also hopefully some recommendations of what folks can do.
Okay, so I write for Fast Company magazine. I wrote about this, and it's really a very, very serious thing that's happened here. And I just read this statistic that said that adult human beings have experienced 24% fewer interactions, social interactions than we did before COVID. So if you're thinking about positive emotions, if you're not experiencing connection with people, you're going to be in harm's way. And that's why we're seeing loneliness. We're seeing mental health issues that we've never seen before because people aren't getting the human connection. So what I'm arguing in the Power of Employee Wellbeing is that if that's true, if we thrive in connection, then we should be setting up the ambition of creating highly connected teams. A lot of times managers will think, well, I want my teams, my employees competing against each other. Who did the most this week? Oh, Tom, you did the least this week. Like, we shouldn't be focused so much on individual performance at the expense of others. We should be looking at how do you create a highly cohesive, supportive team where people actually have their backs, each other's backs, and they look out for each other rather than feel threatened by them, where they're sharing all their best ideas. You're elevating team performance, but you're making people feel connected. And what's fascinating, and I'm so glad you asked this question, the big mind blower for me in my research was finding out that if you were to say, of the 15 things that influence employee well-being, human well-being, what is the number one? I would bet you, because the research is pretty clear on this, that nobody knows the answer. And not only don't they know the answer, most people would go, I didn't think that was important at all. And it's belonging. What we should be doing is creating environments where people get to connect, where we're actually creating social environments, like where we want people, like the boss that walks around and sees two people talking in the hall and they're like, don't you have work to do? Like, that conversation that's going on in the hall may be the most important thing to keeping your team cohesive. You can hold people accountable for performance, but don't micromanage them in the hall. If they're having a conversation, even if they're going, hey, the Chargers beat the Chiefs, I've never seen that happen before, isn't that cool? Let it happen, because it's giving people connection, it's making people feel safe, and it's also making people feel like they belong. I got somebody I can talk football with. Like, that's a very good thing. This is important. And I think managers think, God, I got a million of other things to do. I need to be the social secretary of my team. It's really more of create a culture and express your culture values, where you say, if you want to come to work for me and you want to work on our team, this is what we value. We value diversity. We value voice. We value trust. We value mutual support. And if you want to come and be on a team where you can be a lone wolf and be an individual contributor and want to shine all the time at the expense of other people, this isn't the team for you. This isn't where you belong. Go someplace where they want that competition, but that's not what it's going to be. So if you lay that out for people and they can opt in or opt out, you're going to build a team that really likes being with each other and looks forward to it. And guess what? It builds connection and it builds belonging, but it also drives performance.
I love it. And I know that you commented on being remote and hybrid and sort of the strategy to bring folks back into the office for connection. But I don't think that what you're prescribing is that to have more connection and more workplace friendships that people need to come into the office, because also part of well-being you mentioned is having some autonomy and ownership over your schedule and flexibility. Can you help parse out that recommendation so that it's not just another stressor figuring out the flexibility and scheduling piece? Because that is a reality right now, is that some folks are having to roll out new mandates where you do have to come back into the office.
I mean, the Gallup has some new statistics that show that if you were think back to 2020, like 2/3 of the population were working from home. Anybody who could work from home, worked from home. That's 100%. So that whole year, that's 60%, 65% of people were working from home. And then it's just gone down. It's like 25% now. It's almost as if we've figured this out. Initially, people were like, I never want to go back to an office. I don't need to. I've proved that I can work from home 100% of the time. And then a year later, and this is all in the book, interestingly, that you start to see that people are like, I kind of miss Alex. I haven't seen her. This Zoom stuff that we're doing, I can't do this all day long. I want to go out to lunch with her. I want to see how she's doing. I want to give her a hug. I want to have that physical connection kind of a thing. And I think we've all kind of gotten there. I've always believed this. I always knew it was important. So I've always been an advocate of hybrid. I think having days where you don't have to go in the office and I'm wearing jeans, I've got sandals on, like this is a pretty good deal for me, right? But I also know that if I'm here all by myself all day long and never go out to the world and never be with people, like that's not going to work. And so it means that when people are in the office, you're really intentional. The biggest joke to me is people go into the office and they sit in their cubicles or in their offices and they take Zoom calls with the people that are sitting 5 feet from them instead of going in a meeting room and being in there physically. They get so comfortable with being remote that they're never connecting with people. So the manager's like, get out, get off the Zoom in your office and get out there and be with people, or just require people to be together. I think there's a lot of things you can do intentionally if you have a remote team, but we need to talk about that. It's really just saying that, how can we build connection all the time? So if you have people working 3 days a week from home, for example, and 2 days in the office, that's 60% of the time you're not together. So don't start a meeting going, okay, where are we on this project? And where are we on these numbers? You need to go around the room, tell me how everybody's feeling. What's going on with you? That kind of social connection, hearing people's stories is a way of sustaining it. But I am that person, like me or not, who really believes that you got to be in the office a few days a week at least. I guess the way that I would say this is that the days in the office make the days remote possible.
I like that. Okay, we are running out of time, but I keep wanting to ask you questions because obviously we have not touched on all of the chapters in your book. And I forgot to note for our listeners that this book is very short, and you did that intentionally because we're busy, and it makes it such a great read to get through it all. But obviously it's hard to unpack in just a short conversation. So I want to pass it back to you before we talk about you and wrap up our conversation today. What note do you want to end on about well-being, realizing that we did not get to cover everything? What is a message to our L&D community who have the opportunity to help create conditions for well-being to thrive in the workplace for other people, as well as for their own well-being?
When I wrote Lead from the Heart originally, so I wrote it in 2011. This is a book that has been taught in 11 universities. So what's fascinating to me is education saw it, and an MBA program, a PhD program, and a lot of entrepreneurship all over the board, but education got it. Business somehow just thought that I was insane, that you don't bring heart into leadership. But the big thing was, and probably a big disappointment for me, was the science is pretty remarkable. that shows that the heart is having an impact. And it's not all heart, it's the heart and mind working together, right? I thought, okay, if I'm a CEO and I'm seeing this, I'm going to go, wow, he's just giving us a roadmap for how we're going to manage our organizations going forward. And it didn't happen. And I was like, why is this not happening? It took me a few years to figure it out. Like, why are companies resisting what I'm saying? And they resisted it for probably the big reason is that the way you typically get to the top of an organization is you claw your way up and you're stepping on feet on the ladder. Anybody who's coming up behind you, you're not making it easy for them so you can get there. And a lot of CEOs were like, I don't want caring managers. I want people who are cutthroat. I want people who are going to get results. And they couldn't see that the way that I was talking about managing people actually results in greater performance. What I figured out, and just so grateful to you for pointing this out, because other people are pointing it out to me as well, that there's this massive swelling of interest and excitement around employee well-being. And the reason is not because of CEOs, sorry if they're listening, you're late to the table. It's because we, as a result of COVID, all of us changed our values or we reinforced them. And we were like, I don't want to work for a boss that doesn't love me. I don't want to work for a boss that doesn't support me. I don't want to work on a team that I don't feel like I belong to. I don't want to feel exploited anymore. Life is too short. Well-being is that component. It's like, I want to get up in the morning and be excited about the work I do, wherever I do it. I want to be excited about who I work for. I want to be excited that I'm making a difference. All that's a leadership challenge. And so the interest that you're having in this international meeting and all the different calls that you're doing, it's saying, please give me that. This is what I want. This is what I need. It's like a hurt that needs to be resolved. It's a feeling that I just can't live my life like this. And interestingly, 20% of Americans changed jobs in 18 months after the window of COVID. So when we first went back to the office, 20% of all Americans quit their job and went somewhere else. And in my estimation, it was almost like anywhere I go is going to be better than the crap that I've been putting up with. And so I'm just going to go do something else. Some of these people got more money, but that wasn't what the motivator was. The motivator was, I can't do this anymore. And so this is carrying forward and it's influencing all of us, Alex, to say, I need to work for a company that cares about me. And if I work for a company that cares about me, guess what? We reciprocate. We're naturally hardwired to reciprocate when we feel loved, when we feel cared for, when we feel supported. So well-being is the gift that keeps on giving. And for some reason, heart and well-being, people can accept well-being a lot better than they can heart, but it's the same message. Care about your people, support your people, help them meet the goals that they have for work. Find out what they are, give people individual support, whatever it is those needs are, and you're going to elevate people's well-being and you're going to see performance that you've never seen before. That's my experience.
That's a great note to end on. And one big takeaway for me as well, going back to wellness programs that folks may be investing money in, resources in, that it might also just be more cost effective than the things that you're already doing and paying for right now. It doesn't cost money to show people gratitude, to give them opportunities to connect with their colleagues, to find opportunities to give them recognition, like all of the things that are these drivers.
I'm going to use your word earlier. I don't want people to think that I'm intentionally critical of corporations or companies or CEOs or HR. But I'll let this statement stand on its own. Giving people headspace or yoga classes or, discounted gym memberships is superficial to what we're really talking about. And if you think about it, the person who has the greatest influence on an employee's well-being is by far their manager. It's almost as if we're saying, we know your experience at work is really crappy, but we're going to give you headspace so you can meditate to make it better, right? This is what we're doing. Go take a yoga class at lunch and then come back to your crappy manager. Then we're not all crappy, but you get the point, is that it's wellness, it's not well-being. So if you want to fix well-being, you want to change something, change your managers. Hire people who love other people. Hire people who are advocates for other people. Start there. If you're interviewing somebody and you can't be convinced that they want the best for the people that they're going to be managing, then don't hire them. It's a different model. But if you start there and they have competency to do their job, people are going to thrive. And when people thrive, they perform better. So that's really the message of all of this.
Love it. Well, thank you so much. Let us talk about you before we wrap up. How are you currently growing, getting out of your comfort zone? Do you have any learning goals that you're working on?
So, I have a podcast, and right now, because the book is coming out in a few weeks, so I've been doing it weekly. So I'm reading a book a week for my guests, and I read them, I write all over them, I type up notes. And so I'm very intentional about that. And it's highly informative, right? Obviously, you're reading that. But I'm reading another book a week for me, outside of any discipline related to what I'm reading. And it's so fascinating to me how I'm reading books that I'm thinking, I don't really know anything about this. And then I'm reading it, and there's these threads that connect to everything that I do know. So it's like all it's done, Alex, just reinforce. Like I have this voice inside of me going, you are so on it. This is my entire life experience. You asked me my journey. If I didn't have the upbringing, I never would have managed people the way I managed them. If I didn't manage people the way I managed them, I never would have found the science. If I didn't find the science, I never would have been led to the well-being aspect of this. And so my life experience is being validated in the most profound way, because people are like, yes, thank God he's saying this. Like, this is what we all need. And it's such a win-win. It's like, tell me who is going to argue against the value of employee well-being. There should be no one, even though there will be. People are like, I don't want to spend any money on that. I haven't got time for that. I'm like, okay, then you're not doing your job. It's managerial malpractice once you understand the science of this. It's like we should be having people manage other human beings unless they're intending to support their well-being. Thank you for asking that question. It's cool.
Of course. Well, it sounds like you're busy reading. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, for packaging them so nicely in this book, and helping us understand well-being a little bit more today. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. You're a wonderful interviewer, Alex. So thank you very much. That was great.
Thank you to our sponsor, Canvas by Instructure.
Thanks for listening to this podcast from the Association for Talent Development. Be sure to check the show notes for resources mentioned in today's episode. And if you found the show useful or insightful, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with a colleague.